In this video, I'm going to begin working on the second subcomponent and also the second activity. So essentially these things are one and the same. The secondary component also denotes the second activity. And just to give you kind of a little demo here, this is the finished version of the app. Suppose I log in with a user, click login. Then this is then main activity, which is part of main component, the second subcomponent. And all these fragments, so we have profile fragment, post fragment, those are part of it. The only way to escape this is to go to logout, which I'm then taking back to auth activity and the auth component, the auth subcomponent. So if we take a look at the diagram, we're starting in auth component, auth activity. We log in, we're then taken to main activity where we're given access to the main component, which is the secondary subcomponent. So that's what we're going to be working on in this video, kind of setting up main activity and getting that secondary subcomponent all set up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to build a base activity. And that's going to be placed in the main package directory. So I'm going to call it base activity. And some of you might be wondering why I didn't build a base activity to begin with, why I made an auth activity and I didn't extend by base activity. I just didn't think it was that practical to build a base activity yet. I wanted to keep kind of the authentication stuff away from the rest of the app. So we have auth activity for that. And then once the user is authenticated, they'll get given access to base activity and the rest of the application basically. So that's why I kind of held off on creating a base activity until now. So this base activity is going to extend Dagger app compat activity, just like our auth activity did. And it's abstract because we're going to be extending our other activities by this class. If you're not familiar with how to create a base activity, I did this in my MVVM course on my website. So if you, once again, if you haven't taken my MVVM course, I highly recommend that. That's going to be this one right here, REST API with MVVM and Retrofit 2. I talk about base activities and all that stuff. I think I actually did in the Room Persistence Library course also. So maybe check that one out. That one's actually free. So now the first thing I'm going to do is add a log for debugging. And the second thing is I'm going to inject our session manager. So it's public session manager. And I'm going to be injecting this, of course, because we need to keep track of whether the user is authenticated or not, because we want to observe that authentication state no matter what, in every activity of the application, in every fragment of the application. That way, if you log out or if something goes wrong, they'll instantly be logged out and redirected to the login screen. So now I'm going to insert the onCreate method. So pressing Control O, going to onCreate, looking for that onCreate method somewhere right there. And the first thing I want to do inside here is create another method. Well, I'm going to be calling another method named subscribe observers, and I haven't created that yet. So private void subscribe observers. And inside here is where we want to observe the authentication state. So SessionManager dot get auth, is a get auth user. We want to observe it, observe, pass the lifecycle owner, which is the activity, and then pass a new observer. Now inside here is kind of the same thing we were doing inside of auth activity. So if I go into auth activity, it's going to be very similar, the same kind of switch statement. So I'm going to copy this, go into base activity, and I'm going to paste that in. Now, of course, there's no showing the progress bar. We don't need that. I need to change this. So base activity, did you enter a number? Actually, I don't need this either. Just kind of get rid of that, get rid of that. And now we have kind of that bare bones switch statement that we have in auth activity. Now, the only things that we actually want to do here is maybe let the user know or let the log know that the authenticated user is actually authenticated. So that could stay the same. But in the not authenticated state, we want to redirect them to the login screen. That's kind of the main thing that we want to do. So subscribe observers, and I need to build another method for that. So I'm going to build one more method in here, private void nav login screen is what I'll call it. And in here, I just want to create an intent, do new intent, this, and I want to take them to auth activity. So auth activity dot class. I want to start activity, pass the intent, and I want to finish this activity or finish whatever was happening. And I want to call that inside here. So if for whatever reason, whether they log out or, for whatever reason they become unauthenticated, they'll get redirected to the login screen. And then I can extend all of the other activities by this activity, and now automatically my authentication state is managed. I don't have to do anything ever again about the authentication state. It's all handled right here. Now I'm going to build main activity, which is going to be our next activity. And that's going to be inside of a new package. So if I go into the UI package, I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to call this package, there we go. Call this package main. And inside main, I'm going to create that new activity. So new Java class, I'm going to call it main activity. Going to extend by my base activity that I just created. Going to insert a log for debugging and insert the onCreate method. So onCreate, and I want to set content view to r.layout.activity main, which I haven't made yet. I'm going to go, this needs to get added to the manifest also. So I'm clicking Alt Enter right there, going add activity to manifest, and now I'm going to create this activity main layout file. So I'm going into the layout resource file here, layout resource directory. I'm going to press Control C on activity auth, and I'm going to paste it into the layout folder, the layout directory, and I'm going to rename this activity main. Now I'm going to come into that new layout file that I just created. Should be, and we just want to make this very basic right now. I'm going to delete basically everything in here. So it's just kind of a plain constraint layout, nothing special in there. Next, I need a way to redirect the user to main activity when they're actually authenticated. Because right now we only have a way to redirect to the login screen if they're no longer authenticated. But how do we actually get to main activity in the first place? Well, that's going to be in auth activity. So I'm going to create a new method here. So private void on login success, I'll call it. And this is just going to take the user to main activity. So intent equals new intent. This, I'm going to go to main activity.class, and I want to just start activity, pass the intent, and finish this activity. And then if the user is authenticated, so right here in this authenticated case, I want to call on login success. Now, if the user is successfully authenticated, the authentication state will be observed by the session manager, and it will redirect them to the to the main activity. I was about to say the login screen, but they're going to main activity. Once they're in main activity, it's going to be extended by base activity, and from then on, we're going to be observing the authentication state right here inside of base activity using the session manager. Now, the last step is adding this new activity to our activity builders module. Because remember, since we're using the Dagger Android imports, we always need to add all of our subcomponents or our activities to the using the @contributes Android injector. So I'm going to actually I don't need to add any modules yet. We don't have any modules for it yet. So I'm creating a new abstract method, main activity, contribute main activity is the convention, the naming convention for this. And that's it. Now we will have a new subcomponent named main activity subcomponent, and we'll have our first subcomponent, which was auth activity subcomponent. So if I run this, I should be able to log in, and we should see us log in into main activity. Actually, just to kind of let us know, we could add a toast here. So toast this, I'll just say main activity. I can run that again. That way, if we go into main activity, we at least know that we have successfully entered main activity. So here's the app on the screen. I'm going to type any ID, just number 7, click login. There is the progress bar, and there's that toast saying main activity. Now, of course, there's no way to log out right now, but that's what I'm going to work on in the next video. I'm going to add a little menu option up here. I'll actually run the finished version of the app and just show you really quick here. So here's the finished version of the app. If I type an ID, I log in, and then I have this kind of log out option up here in the menu. So if I click that, I'm logged out. And what's happening is base activity is detecting a change in the authentication state, and it's navigating to the login screen. But that's going to be we're going to talk more about that in the next coming videos.